The Necromancer is a very niche tower that spawns skeletons to do its bidding. It is considered as an exclusive tower, although it costs gems, which makes players, aka me, confused on what it actually is. Hardcore or exclusive, we may never know. Additionally, this tower is only available during Halloween, which makes obtaining one pretty difficult. And so the main kit of this tower is to basically spam skeletons onto the enemies and easily clear them. At least in a dream world. In reality, there's many things to take account of this weird clunky tower, such as timing, its ability, level, and the ridiculous amount of RNG this tower needs. So I'll be talking about it and if the Necromancer is even worth 1800 gems to begin with, since at that point you might as well just save for the Accelerator, since, I don't know, maybe it's a better tower. But before we talk about my opinion, let's talk about the upgrades first. Don't worry, I'll keep it brief. When you place the Necromancer, he costs $1,650 and deals basically no damage, has no range, spawns level 1 skeletons, it's kind of alright. Level 1 is just more damage, more gravestones, and more piercing. Level 2 costs almost 2 grand for basically better skeletons, better damage, and more piercing. Level 3 costs almost 10k, which is a lot obviously. It basically just spawns level 2 gravestones, summons cooler skeletons, gets more piercing, and more damage. And lastly, level 4, dealing more damage, spawning cooler and bigger skeletons. Oh, and did I mention the price? Oh, it's just a small $30,000, nothing to worry about. The Necromancer's ability additionally deals 300 splash damage whilst using its ability, with the gravestones breaking of course. And yeah, that's all to just give you some info about the levels of the Necromancer. Now, I want to talk about some of the more in-depth stuff and some background information at first. So, talking about the use of the Necromancer, in my opinion, placing the Necromancer within the first 20 waves is kind of garbage due to the high price and low damage output. It's safe to say he's not a good option for both early and mid game. However, once it reaches the last 10 waves, or any waves in general that is like near ending, I think the Necromancer is an okay option. But I mean, let's just take another better tower as an example, like the Accelerator, which also costs gems. I mean, this is my opinion, so don't take it too seriously. The Accelerator is useful for almost any scenario, just having the price and the charging beam being the nerf. However, for the Necromancer, you would need to know when to time your skill, what level those skeleton graves are, the gravestones placements, how much damage all the skeletons can even dish out minimally, you know, some very basic stuff. But we'll talk about these two examples more later in this video. The examples, as I mean the Accelerator and the Necromancer. Okay, anyways. Additionally, the Necromancer has this cool unique attribute where on the top of this part, you can basically see that he has a random meter bar. That is called the soul meter, according to the wiki, and it basically just shows how much damage the Necromancer needs to deal to summon a single gravestone. So yeah, spamming the ability is definitely not recommended. It can kind of help when you don't know how much damage the Necromancer needs to output to summon the 6 gravestones and upgrading all those gravestones as well. Speaking of which, let's talk about it. The Necromancer in itself has already been given lead penetration and flying detection during its placement, and normally I would say that in theory this tower would be amazing for hardcore, but at the same time, the price just throws me off so much. At that point, just use the Engineer. I mean, that is if you have it in the first place. Anyways, I forgot to mention about its ability. The Necromancer's ability is apparently called the Raise of the Dead from the wiki, and as the name suggests, it spawns skeletons. Whoa. How did I figure that one out? But the big annoying issue of this ability is that when used, all the previous skeletons you summon with this ability would be killed, and instead it would be replaced with the current skeletons you summon with the gravestones you had at that time. There's another small little thing where when you use the ability, it does this small animation thing which decreases your Necromancer's DPS by quite a bit too. So time it properly if you are using this tower, I guess. Secondly, the Necromancer will only summon 6 gravestones maximum, and after that it will not summon anymore. Oh, 7. Secondly, the Necromancer will only summon 7 gravestones maximum, and after that, it will not summon anymore. But through upgrading its levels, the Necromancer can upgrade these gravestones, making them stronger, better, faster, you get the idea. Leading me onto this part of the video about the types of skeletons spawned by these gravestones. The Necromancer has 6 different types of skeletons that the gravestones can spawn in, that being the skeletons, sword skeletons, skeleton knights, giant skeletons, hallow guards, and executioner skeletons. These skeletons are spawned in different leveled gravestones, as with the corresponding level the Necromancer is in at that moment. Level 1 gravestones can spawn these, level 2 gravestones can spawn these, and level 3 gravestones can spawn these. And the level of these gravestones corresponds to the level of the Necromancer. So when the gravestone is level 1, the Necromancer can only spawn these, whilst in level 2, the Necromancer can spawn these. And additionally, the gravestone spawned through the Necromancer is RNG as well, making strategies using the Necromancer completely RNG based. Although I can can't find any strategy containing the Necromancer. And it's not guaranteed that these gravestones will spawn that specific tower you want it to be. It's pretty hard to integrate such a luck-based tower into something you would like to repeat for many times, aka a strategy for an event. Like, for example, you want an Executioner skeleton? Well, too bad. Your level 3 gravestone will instead spawn a Skeleton Knight. Oh, right, let's talk about all the skeletons now, just a little bit more in depth. So for the normal skeletons, they're just stupid normal NPCs that just runs into other zombies. They are of average speed and has 30 HP. They spawn in the level 1 gravestones. Next, we have the sword skeletons, which are actual fighting NPCs that will attack any zombies in range of it. It can do 15 damage per hit and has 30 HP. They also spawn from the level 1 gravestones. However, the sword skeleton can only be spawned when the Necromancer is level 2. Now, if the Necromancer is level 3, it is able to upgrade the level 1 gravestones to level 2, which brings on some new skeletons. I'll be skipping this skeleton since we literally just went over it. Skeleton Knights are basically the same as sword skeletons, doing 35 damage per swing and having 100 HP. A quite big upgrade compared to the level 1 gravestone already. Level 2 gravestones are also able to summon giant skeletons, which are just super tanky skeletons that rams to other zombies. It has 250 HP and is really nice as a backup defense against lightnings or speedy zombies. Anyhow, once the Necromancer reaches its final level, it is able to upgrade the level 2 gravestones into level 3. Level 3 gravestones can summon Skeleton Knights, Hallow Guards, and Executioner skeletons. I'll skip Skeleton Knights as well. Hallow Guards are basically the equivalent of the giant skeleton, but having a more thicker health pool. Before the buff, I'd say that this Hallow Guard was so goddamn mid, but now I think it's pretty good. It's really tanky and just feels like you have a wall just walking up towards the zombies. Very nice. Which brings me onto the Executioner skeleton. Not gonna lie, very cool. And it is quite busted too. It has a fire rate of 0.1 and each swing deals 50 damage. Oh, did I forget to mention the 3500 HP he has? It's basically as if the Executioner got a skeleton redesign and if it was a mini boss. And so with that being said, how do we even use the Necromancer in the first place? Because think about it, factually speaking, and since I just realized this whilst recording footage for this video, if we don't want the gravestone to spawn in a specific area, we can use this green circle thing to tell it where to go. Well, it's not like I can just click at this spot and it'll only spawn gravestones there. No. It doesn't work like that. To control the gravestone's placement, all we have to do is that we must make that spot the only spot that's available for the Necromancer to summon its gravestones in. Because let's say we put the Necromancer here, it'll 100% either spawn its gravestones here or here. But if we move the Necromancer just a tiny bit further, we can see that the Necromancer only spawns gravestones in that area, enabling us to manipulate where the gravestones are getting spawned on. However, there is a drawback, obviously. Due to how insanely massive this circle is, you'd have to be at quite a far distance to be able to use this stupid technique I made up. And since the Necromancer has quite a large range already, you might think that this is no big problem until you realize that the Necromancer has to deal damage in order to summon said gravestones. Now this will only be a problem further on as your towers progressively become better and stronger as the wave progresses, resulting in your Necromancer just straight up not being able to hit any of the zombies whatsoever. Either the zombies will be spawn killed or pass through the defenses and lose the game. Of course, not only that, the Necromancer's animations are extremely annoying to perform in the middle of a match too, since it basically stuns the Necromancer for a temporary amount of time, that being 3 to 4 seconds, and then going back to attacking. Of course, in the grand scheme of things, this isn't going to change a lot, but I think it's still worth mentioning. But now, let's talk about my opinion, as if I wasn't already, since I'd like to mention quite a few things of this new buffed Necromancer, and most of it is negative, but you can say that there's positive too. The Necromancer is a good tower, yes, but the weaknesses are what is attracting me the most. But I mean, the weaknesses of every tower in the game is the most important part to take a look at. But for me, my critique will be more strict due to it costing gems. And you know how painfully slow and repetitive it is to grind said gems. So firstly, the price. The price for the 3rd and 4th level makes the tower a really ineffective tower to defend with. Level 1 and 2 is okay, but when you're defending against zombies that have big health pools and is really quick, the Necromancer struggles to defend against it. By this point, I could have gotten the accelerator and basically breezed through all the waves easily, whilst if I had been using the Necromancer, I would be stuck having to kill this slow boss for a really long time. Comparing Accelerator's DPS and Necromancer's DPS isn't very fair, But if you take a look at the gem cost of the two towers, I'd argue that you'd have to compare both of them to be fair. For the majority of the player base of TDS, mainly everyone wants the best towers that can perform the best in their matches, and the difference of the price between the Accelerator and the Necromancer is only 700 gems, which when you look at the pros and cons, it's quite obvious that the Accelerator just has it all for him. Of course, lead penetration and flying detection, he's got none of that. But in the grand scheme of things, you wouldn't be seeing those two types of zombies appearing anywhere outside of events and hardcore. The amount of damage being output by the Necromancer is pretty decent, but I'd argue that the Accelerator just does a better job as a whole if you're talking in that department. Of course, you can argue that the speedies will not pass through if Necromancers are attacking, but Accelerators will leak through several speedy zombies due to it having to charge its beam, but I mean, we don't talk about that. Now, not only that, but the Necromancer is also super luck based as well. You'd have to flip a coin and pray that you always land heads, because if you don't, you'll be blessed with a whole lot of skeleton knights. Executioner skeletons are amazing, yes, they deal a lot of damage and can take a lot of damage, but the problem is, spawning one is relatively rare. It's the most strongest of the three skeletons, so of course it'd be harder to spawn a singular one. Hello Guards are able to be an alright replacement with it, but at the same time, if you're using the Necromancer, you'd most likely be wanting the Executioner skeleton, or at least a single one, and each ability spawn, since if not, the DPS loss there is quite a big margin, especially when you're struggling in specific waves during a match. The price was the main point of interest that I kept seeing in my first script since I had to redo it due to the sudden change of the tower, but I have to agree that it is the main flaw of this tower, because the damage between the first level and the second level isn't able to keep up most zombies in the game at all. However, let's talk about some positive parts now, since I think we like positive stuff. I'm not sure if you like it. If you have good luck and you position your Necromancer's gravestones properly, you are able to 100% dish out massive damage with the Necromancer. According to the wiki, the Necromancer is able to dish out 64 DPS, and then Executioner skeletons are able to dish out 124 DPS. I'm not sure if that's true, you can fact check that if you want. This is quite a huge DPS increase due to the Executioner skeletons having a chance to spawn in more than once. Its ability is pretty useful in that regard, plus you can place a total of 4 Necromancers. It's great in the late game, and the piercing talent of the Necromancer is also very handy to have, since it deals AoE damage, allowing your other towers to dish out more damage for the tankier enemies. Its use in hardcore is also really appreciated due to the ability to smash through lead and detect flying enemies, which would become a more pain in the horse in the later waves, but the Necromancer got that covered out very nicely. It is able to be used in more events too, just because of that. If the event, of course, contains annoying flying enemies, I think I'd rather use the Mortar though, I'm not gonna lie. Naturally, sometimes your team also wants spawn towers like for dishing extra damage, and just because it looks really cool to have. It's a fun tower to use, and in my opinion, pretty okay once you get the hang of it. Now, this won't be such a big shock, but Necromancer in itself is a really niche tower in my opinion. It's a tower that can do hefty amounts of damage if you know what you're doing, but in the world of meta and TDS, I don't think it's up there to be counted as one, due to it only being used as a late game tower, and having unreliable DPS and RNG significantly tanks this tower's potential as a whole. And so finally, the Necromancer is a tower that is not worth 1800 gems, and in my opinion, not worth it. He's a very good tower to replace some of the towers in your party slot, but once you're able to obtain like most of the meta towers, you'll find yourself never actually using the Necromancer until some very specific event that gives Necromancers a much higher advantage than the rest of the towers. However, I still don't really like using the Necromancer all that much, and even though it is a very fun tower to use, seriously using it in a real match is no thanks for me. But this is just my opinion. I have the Golden Mini, the Engineer, the Accelerator, you know, just all of like the most overpowered towers in the game, so it's kind of biased. Anyways, that's all for this video. Subscribe because I like big number. And thanks for watching. I am Mootsie, and I'll be hibernating. I'm gonna play Deep Oaken. Bye.